For attending our gathering to celebrate the life of everyone's friend, Glenn Campbell. We want to make sure that, kind of song a little bit, make sure that we have a live feed going. Even though there's a lot of people here, Glenn touched a lot of people all around the world. And so we have a live feed going around the world, and to his family back east as well. So we got the thumbs up that we're working back east. That's all working, that's good. I do want to acknowledge this amazing school of visual effects called Gnomon that was founded over 20 years ago by a man named Alex Alvarez, who recognized the need to have legends of the craft teach the next generation of artists. And in his formation, Glenn Campbell was a part of that group that Alex turned to. So it's really nice and fitting that we're here. It's through Alex's generosity and the volunteers giving up their Sunday that we're here today. And so I just want to thank them and everyone here at Gnomon for doing that. This facility is brand new. They've been in Hollywood for a number of years. This facility is 9 weeks old. It's amazing. So thank you for that. Also want to thank the family that is here. His mother, Rosemary, is here, and his girlfriend, Tammy, is here, and other family members are here, and we're just very grateful. There are other Easter eggs here during this event. The caterer, Groupsie, was one of Glenn's favorites. The bacon, of course. It's just bacon, but you know, Glenn, you know the bacon. So it's not just for display. Please have some. I don't want to take it home because I'll just eat it. So please. And our host starred in a very dramatic movie that Glenn co-directed with Tammy, and she can talk about that too. So before I bring her up, I do want to kind of explain what this is going to be. This is not a somber event, although we're going to talk, we're going to talk stories about Glenn, and we're going to celebrate who Glenn is and who he meant to us. It's a little casual. There will be some, colleagues and old friends of his talking about, Glenn, and showing some videos and whatnot. So that's going to happen. And so feel free also to have some food and some drink, and there's bathrooms over there. We're going to take a break at a certain point after. We're going to see a wonderful film that Mark Pirro made, an old friend of his. And then at that point, we're going to see if there's anyone that wants to talk about Glenn and your own personal stories too. So that's kind of the structure of what today's all about. So anyways, without any further ado, I want to bring up Maxie Woodtrack. So Maxie.
Woo! Thank you, all of you, for being here. Each of us is here because we all have the good fortune of knowing the one and only Glenn Campbell. Today we'll get a chance to share some memories of a truly wonderful human being and friend. Glenn was kind, Glenn was thoughtful, Glenn was gentle, and whether you knew him only a short while or a very long time, I think we can all agree Glenn Campbell was a giant nerd. Every time he came by the studio, Glenn was always so excited to show me some new effect he'd been working on. He really loved what he did and was so excited to share it with others. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from a few of Glenn's friends and colleagues to learn more about the man who pretty much lived at the Asylum studio in Burbank. I've looked through the speeches and heard some of the stories, and a few things you won't find in them. Glenn turned down a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Visual Effects Society. I know, he was also a founding member of the Visual Effects Society. He was hired for Star Wars, but didn't work on Star Wars. Some of his influences include Douglas Trumbull, John Knoll, and Ray Harryhausen's Jason and the Argonauts, where he fell in love with stop-motion animation. He consulted with Alex in the formation of this very school that continues to pass on his passion. He was also a board member at the Los Angeles City College Cinema and TV Department. I missed the joke. Man, my name is Maxie Whittrack. I had the privilege of getting to know Glenn and many of you thanks to an asylum film by the name of Shark Side of the Moon. Yep. Looking back, think I am where I am in part thanks to this movie. Because now when people hear Maxie Whittrack, star of Shark Side of the Moon, they say, who? If you're not familiar, it's about a team of astronauts who crash land on the moon where they have to fight for survival against shark-human monsters that the Russians developed in the Cold War and lost control of. They tricked them onto a rocket ship where years later, the only surviving Russian scientist and his adopted shark-human daughter help our side fight to get back to Earth. And with a plot like that, if you're anything like my dad, you might be asking, it's not porn, is it? And if you're anything like me, you might answer, gotta watch to find out. Glenn's work on the shark VFX was truly incredible. It is so clear when you look at us fighting them with our cardboard harpoons that that is where all the budget went. It's a very uncertain time post-pandemic to be making a movie, but Glenn and Tammy piloted us through. The crew poured themselves into making incredible things happen in true asylum family style, like when they built the tunnels of the shark's compound out of plastic bags and kitty litter. We spent hours in those enclosed tunnels, and remarkably, no one got COVID. But 3 of us did get black lung. My first memory of meeting Glenn, he was overseeing a dispute with wardrobe about what kind of protective gear we would be wearing in outer space. And if you've seen the movie, I think we can say thank goodness he intervened, or else we might have looked ridiculous. It was the first time I'd ever seen a director so unfazed by creative differences. We were delayed nearly the entire first shoot day over the issue of whether we could just wear cat suits because we were low on spacesuits. And I remember Glenn staying so calm and cool and polite with wardrobe as they were insistent that we not look, and I quote, like space bimbos. And I wish I could have the chance to go back to Glenn and say, Glenn, can I please just look like a space bimbo? I don't know what anyone else expects when they sign on for an asylum film, but I definitely didn't expect that the shark warrior human in her coconut bra top would be the only boobs I'd see all movie. Glenn kept the peace on long shoot days in his usual good-humored way. He and Tammy made it relaxed, fun. They kept the perspective that we were making a movie. It wasn't rocket science. Actually, we could have used some rocket science. There were a lot of arguments about the science involved, like whether the sharks speak English or Russian. Out of the many unrealistic scenarios in Sharkside, probably the biggest plot twist is in the end, where we are way out in the water in a life raft, and none of us actually get eaten by a shark in real life. I have to imagine one of the Davids would have been thrilled to capture that at no extra expense. Glenn would have called headquarters to tell them the bad news. They would have been like, okay, but you got it, right? Shooting with Glenn and Tammy taught me a lot about treating the people you work with respect, and that you don't have to let stress ruin the fun and magic of making a movie. At the end of the day, I learned from Glenn, you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't outrun a shark. And now I have the privilege of introducing a few of Glenn's friends and coworkers who will share their memories from him, from their time with him. This first person met Glenn in the 1970s, and they have been friends and coworkers ever since. Please welcome Tim McHugh.
I want to thank everybody for coming today. First of all, I know it's a tough season to get anywhere and do anything apart, but thank you for coming down. All right. The picture you see behind me was taken at the Howard Anderson Company at Paramount Studios in early June 1978. I call it the unindicted co-conspirators. Glenn Campbell and I started our motion picture production careers together on the same day. And try this again. On the same day, in the same place, at the same time. We were both 20 years old and couldn't have been more excited to finally be working in the magic industry we dreamed about since childhood. In retrospect, the start of my professional career was the second most important thing that happened on that day. Of prime importance was beginning a deep friendship that lasted just short of a century. What initially brought us together was a training program to cultivate new visual effects talent for an industry looking to cash in the unprecedented success of Star Wars. And let me tell you, we were kids in a candy shop. Walking to the Paramount commissary for lunch, we'd see the cast of Happy Days playing basketball just outside their stage. After lunch, we'd always take the long way back to the shop, making sure to cut through the bridge set for the new Star Trek feature that was about to start shooting. I remember once the entire cast of Gilligan's Island walked past us in full wardrobe and makeup. It was like we'd stepped into a television set to meet the heroes of our childhood. And even though we were being paid almost nothing, it was $113 a week after taxes, and as trainees we were treated as low men on the totem pole, we thought we were on top of the world. And from our perspectives, we were. Two kids from the East Coast, New Jersey in Glenn's case, New York in mine, had been invited into the heart of Hollywood magic. I'm telling you this because in order to understand Glenn's character, you need to know how deeply committed he was to the entire world of filmmaking. Every detail of every aspect fascinated him. The writing, the filming, the acting, the editing, the music, and of course the effects that he ate, drank, lived, and breathed. After our time at Paramount, we were sent to separate studios, but soon ended up together again at Universal Heartland for Galactica and Buck Rogers. Later, we found ourselves in Marina del Rey working on Blade Runner, and then on at Disney for a variety of projects. Life was good. When I was foolish enough to set up my own company, Area 51, I asked Glenn to join me. At the time, he was at Sony ImageWorks, finishing up Johnny Mnemonic. I warned him there was only a commitment for a pilot, and we could all be out of work in about 9 months, if it didn't sell. But the producers were really cool young guys, and I was sure he'd like to work with them. Luckily for me and the project, he jumped at the chance. That pilot was Space Above and Beyond, and I have to say it was one of our best working experiences ever. The showrunners, Glenn Morgan and Jim Wong, made us feel important and valued members of the team. The good news was the show was picked up. Bad news was it only lasted one season. It did, however, get us our first Emmy nomination, and I guess some notice. And over the years, we've remained friends with many of the cast and crew. For the next 20 years, we did more projects together than I can possibly count or remember. Many were fun, some were absolute nightmares. Through it all, Glenn was an extremely calm and collected keel, keeping the ship upright. Area 51 would not have existed without Glenn. During this time, Glenn famously owned a number of cats. But his own personality was pure puppy. And when he was waxing eloquent about any of the many topics that caused interest, you could almost see his tail wagging. His effervescent enthusiasm did not stop at movies. He was constantly reading. one or more novels going at all times, and couldn't pass a magazine stand without depleting half of their racks. On weekends, we would haunt record swap meets where he would buy stacks of CDs. We saw great concerts. Elton John, his personal favorite, Phil Collins, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and The Who. Whether he was teaching a class at UCLA, traveling around the world giving lectures, reviewing student reels, or holding court at his desk surrounded by monitors featuring the several shots he was working on simultaneously. He was always entertaining, educating, enlightening, and certainly inspiring the next generations of filmmakers. I didn't want to talk about his passing because I'm slowly coming to terms. But I can tell you on that horrible Monday morning, I grabbed my phone, and as I headed upstairs, noticed a message from Glenn's mom. I have no idea how long I stood and then sat on those stairs in shocked disbelief. Later, I talked to one of his friends and coworkers who told me that around midnight, Glenn had been texting him and sending him photos of all the machines he was connected to at the hospital. I take some solace in the fact that he was still very much Glenn right up until the final hours. In many ways, we are all carny people who travel in and out of town with the circus. For most of our lives, when we get up, where we're going, what we're eating, and with whom we'll be traveling, are all handed to us on the call sheet. When the show is over, we pack up our tents and regroup for the next one in somewhat absurd variation of musical chairs. To have a great friend and maintain that friendship for so long in this crazy, dehumanizing business is quite a blessing. Going through the photos, videos, and memorabilia to prepare for today, triggered a memory of one particular night we shared. Composer Shirley Walker invited us to the final scoring session for Space Above and Beyond. Glenn was a big fan of her work and had, in fact, recommended her for the job for which she received an Emmy nomination. We sat in a control booth with her, absorbing everything around us. The scene being scored consisted of the final shot of the series. Two of our heroes lying silently on their bunks, having limped back from a massive battle. Many of their compadres had been killed or left missing in action. For the final track, Shirley insisted that we join the orchestra on the stage to get the full acoustical impact. When it was over, she came in and told us that what the mics had picked up was not only the music coming from the instruments, but also the ambient acoustics of the room, formed by the bodies of all those present. We were now all physically part of that final recording. I would like for you to hear it now. I think that was Shirley's way of thanking Glenn for recommending her for the job. As fans of the show, that's good. Shirley not only delivered, she hit it out of the park. And as happens so frequently in Hollywood, that music didn't make it into the show and was left on the cutting room floor. But just like that recording, we've all been touched by Glenn's indelible presence. I know I'm much better the person for it. In our industry, and in our lives, he's truly irreplaceable. Thank you for coming to honor my friend.
Thank you, friends. This next guest worked with Glenn on Hollywood classics such as The Green Hornet and Spaceballs. Please welcome John Eves.
Well, hello, everybody. Hopefully I'll get through this. I'm proud of Tim. He did a great job coming out. But as we're all here celebrating a wonderful friend, I just wanted to share a couple moments that I shared with Glenn when I met him. And many of you started about the same time I did in the mid-'80s and visual effects. And a lot of you out there are my heroes from long before that and still are. And with Glenn, I met him at Apogee. I started working there in 1985 on, we were painting, Kim Bailey, my friend over there, we were painting latex skin at a dinosaur in the middle of the summer. That's how I got my job there. And we started, it was either Spaceballs or Invaders from Mars is where I met Glenn. And I had heard on the speaker, it was back when they just had an office phone, I kept hearing Glenn Campbell, you have a phone call. And being from Arizona, I thought, Glenn Campbell. I'd run around, I go, has anyone seen Glenn Campbell? And Doug Smith, the cameraman, I go, he's sitting right over there. And I go, and I always see the real our Glenn Campbell. And I go, well, where's the singer, Glenn? And I actually asked Glenn, I go, do you know what Glenn Campbell is? He goes, that's me. I go, stop being so funny. Where's the other Glenn Campbell? He goes, no, I'm the Glenn Campbell. The other one, he doesn't work there. And that's how we met. And he goes, who are you? Where are you? And I go, I just started the model shop in Arizona and all this stuff. He goes, we became good friends from that. And he starts bringing up, you want to go get dinner or lunch and that stuff after work? I go, I'd love to. And he starts naming out these restaurants. And he goes, have you ever had Thai food? I go, unheard of. What is Thai food? Arizona has Mexican food and steaks. That's it. And he goes, well, Thai food is wonderful. He goes, what about Indian food? And I go, oh, I love Navajo fried bread. He goes, no, not Native American Indian food, Indian food. And then he brought up sushi. He goes, you ever had sushi? I go, I don't know what that is. And he goes, all right, we're going for it. And this was the day when he had the big head of hair. And so we went to a little place on Ventura, and they brought out some roll. He picked something, and I realized with the very first bite that wasabi makes me sneeze instantly. And so we're at the bar. He's to the side with the gentleman here and the chefs in front. And I had a big mouthful of rice. That sneeze started coming. I didn't have a napkin. I didn't have time to eat. So I sneezed on the guy I don't know, the chef or Glenn. And I filled his head of hair with rice. All the way to the scalp. Nancy, that I think started our great humorous friendship. And as you know, he's got a very interesting diabolical side. And we were seeing The Little Mermaid. I don't know why he chose that. We're going to go see The Little Mermaid at the Odeon Theater at Universal before City Walk. He takes us out there, and we got his tickets in the teeny tiny theater, way on the west side. And I go, what's on? It's playing on all these big screens. We went to this little teeny tiny theater, watched it. And when the movie ended, he goes, now the fun begins. And so there's a fire exit right up at the top of those stairs. So we go out and there's no alarm. And he goes, I know this because I used to work at Universal. And so we take these stairs down. It takes us to the amphitheater. It's New Year's Eve, and Manhattan Transfer's playing. And he goes, we're already in for free because where that path took you was past all the tickets. So they've already checked you 18 times. We must have seen 30 concerts that way. We'd go see whatever was playing in that little theater on the night we saw Wingo Wingo. I mean, we saw everybody for free. The guy's amazing. But on a level that we all know him from, I can't think of a nicer, like she was saying, a more kinder gentleman than he was. And he knew everything. He shared all his knowledge with everybody. And everyone here, I'm sure you have as many wonderful stories and fun times with him. But I miss him greatly. The last time I saw him was at one of Gene's Geek Nights. And it was nice to finally see him in person. You know, internet, talking on the phone is one thing, but seeing him in person was wonderful. And meeting Tammy, and when he had the bout of cancer, I'd never been so worried for a friend in my life. And I was working in El Segundo, and visiting hours ended today. So I tell my boss, I gotta leave. I gotta go see Glenn in the hospital. I think I only made it 2 times for that traffic, but I'm glad he pulled through that. And I wasn't expecting today, as anybody here's probably feeling the same thing. But I'll end it with one more story about Glenn. And like I said, our hearts are broken because of this day. And we're at the funny age where we only see people that we know and love at these events. And I hope we can all, when we go home, remember to call somebody that you know and love, that you've met through Hollywood and through Glenn, just to say, hey, before it's the wrong time. But anyways, with Glenn, we were gonna go out one night, and I got 2 hours before it was supposed to, I didn't feel too good. I called Glenn, I got a head cold, I can't go. And he goes, I have the cure. He goes, I'm not coming to your house, but I'll leave something at your door. And so I hear the knock, and I hear his feet run out. He's going to be anywhere near, and he had left a bottle of brandy at my door. I don't drink, I've never drank it before. And he called me and goes, okay, heat up a little glass of that in the microwave. Clear you right up. It'd be fantastic. And so I go, that's a good idea. I tried it. Ooh, brandy. But he's right, it cleared me right up. About half an hour later, I get stuffy again. Okay, I'll have another one of those. This is working. This is fantastic. He goes, excellent. Keep that up. After doing it 3 times. This was probably 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Sunday afternoon at 4 in the afternoon, I woke up with a horrible headache, an empty file in my hand. My clothes were gone, my front door was open, there were records all over the floor, and Glenn was standing at the door. He goes, oh, I guess it worked. One of my funniest memories of Glenn was that stupid brandy, and now if I smell it, I get instantly ill. But there you go. But to Glenn, I love you, but I miss you, and I know you're looking down on all your friends here, and love you, pal. God speak to you.
Thank you, John. This next friend is an instructor and has been for 10 years at this very school. He began working with Glenn 30 years ago and has never stopped. Even now, he continues to freelance in the projects where Glenn left off at the asylum. Please welcome Don McCoy.
All right, so no notes. I'm going to try and wing this. I met Glenn, guys, back in the early or late 90s. I was a hobbyist animator and wanting to get in the industry, worked in the aerospace industry. And I had heard that a company called Area 51 was looking for animators. I put a little reel together, and I met Tim and Glenn over at their offices over in Pasadena. And at the time that I went in there, Tim was gracious enough to say, hey, your work is good, but I don't think you're ready yet. And I accepted that. And but it was kind of neat to be able to meet these 2 people, Tim McHugh and Glenn Campbell, because these were 2 individuals that when I was learning about this software called Lightwave 3D, that they were guys that were actually using the software in the industry, and I was admired by them. I mean, I just admired what they did. And it wasn't until '96 that I ended up landing a job at Saban Entertainment to do a Saturday morning cartoon called Silver Surfer. And we needed help doing the opening sequence to our show. And Dale Hendrickson had said, we need help doing this. And I was like, hey, what about Area 51? So we contacted Area 51, and they helped us with the opener. And after about 4 years, and they did a fantastic job, their team was like just top notch. After about 4 years, I had a small little project that came to me with the guy that brought me into Saban named Dale Hendrickson. He was the character design supervisor for The Simpsons. And he brought this small little project to me, and with another friend of ours, and he said, hey, he goes, I got this project. We built a 3D animation studio at Saban. Let's do this for ourselves. And I was like, I looked at the project and I was like, there's no way we can do this with your machine at your home, my machine at my home, and let's figure something out. I said, why don't we call Area 51? And so I called Tim McHugh, And I asked him if his company was busy, and he said, no. Matter of fact, we're in a small section, we're not doing anything. And I said, I got a little project. I've got some money to pay you to do this. Can we bring it over? He goes, more than welcome. So I brought this project over, and we worked on it for about 2 weeks. At the end of the project, Tim called me aside, and he was like, hey, I want to take you out to dinner. And while we were there, I was really excited because Tim McHugh and Glenn Campbell, Area 51, who I admired years prior, now we're working side by side on this small little project. We finished the project. Tim takes me out to dinner, and he goes, hey, are you happy over at Saban? And I was like, well, you know, been here for 4 years. He goes, I want you to work for me. And I was like, really? You and Glenn? He goes, yeah. I go, yes. I made that decision because, like I said, I admired these two individuals, that I knew what they had did for the industry, and kind of heard a little bit of stories about Tim and Glenn. And then I started working for them. And we worked on this one small little project, which we kind of laugh about because it's in the TV Academy. It's the worst pilot ever made. And it wasn't because of the work that we did, it was the content of it. And if you guys want to look it up, it's called Heat Vision and Jack. And matter of fact, Mr. John Van Vliet is in the audience here. We actually brought him in to help us work on that project. But so the real project that Tim brought me in for was for a mini series called Frank Herbert's Dune. And so we moved, at the time we were at a facility over in Playa Vista. And in order to do Dune, we moved over into Burbank area and started hiring some people to work on this project. And we were one of 3 companies that did the visual effects on Children of Dune. And it came time, Emmy season, and Tim, because we were one of 3 companies that worked on it, if you know anything about the Emmys, you're only given 8 awards for that category, for visual effects, special visual effects in a miniseries. And so since we were one of 3 companies, we only were allowed to have 2. And Tim decided it was going to be Tim and Glenn on the award. And Glenn graciously pulled his name from that because he felt like, you know what, there's somebody else that is more worthy than the work that he did. And Glenn did fantastic work on that. He did the worst blue screen shot that I ever saw. The blue screen shot was like, we kind of laughed about it because it was called, we called it the blue jean shot. It was shot with terrible shadows and everything, but the work that he did on that, he pulled wonders out of it. And so he gave up his opportunity to win an award that year. And the gentleman is here, Chris Zapara. We ended up winning, and so Tim and Chris got the award. 2 years later, we get awarded to do Frank Herbert's Children of Dune. And on that show, there was, because we were the primary company, we got 8 awards. And Tim submitted 8 names. Chris was also on that. Glenn this time was on it, myself. Andrew Harlow was in the audience here somewhere, and a few other people. And we ended up winning, and he got his Emmy for the Dune series. But so during that time, after we finished Children of Dune, we spent, I started working with them in 2000, and I ended up working for them for about 7 years. And I literally had my desk, I could reach out and get Glenn. And when we were working together, I was compositing with a different software. And the software I was compositing was called Digital Fusion. And we started working on Children of Dune, and Glenn took me aside and said, Don, because I know you composite in this one software, but every artist that we bring in is an After Effects artist and a Lightwave artist. Because you're gonna have to learn After Effects, because any artist that we bring in, if they're not there, you might have to pick up their shot. Or vice versa. If I'm not there, they might have to pick up my shot. So I go, well, how long do we have? He goes, 2 weeks. He goes, you understand compositing? You just need to learn the software. So we have 2 weeks. In about a week, I was like going, hey, Glenn, you know you can do this? And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, you can do this. And he's like, oh, really? Yeah, you know you can do this? He goes, no, I didn't know that. And so now Glenn had somebody that was like right next to him that, like, he could ask, I could ask him tons of questions, and then every now and then, he would have a question for me. And being able to work side by side with that gentleman and his history of his knowledge in visual effects, I got to know him a lot, very, very good. Very well over the years. And he used to tell me a lot of stories about his start in the industry. And one of the stories that I always enjoyed him telling, because I heard him tell it many times to other people, is how he ended up getting on the back lot of Universal. Glenn grew up in Hollywood in his high school years, and in the summertime he would take the bus over the hill to Universal, and his mom's here right now, right? You know about the story on how he got on the back lot, right? Okay. So Glenn was so interested in Hollywood that he would, in the summertime, he would take the bus over the hill to Universal Studios, and he would stand out by the guard shack, and he would look at the guard shack and watch people at lunchtime go back into the facility. And he was like, he did this for like 3 or 4 days or maybe a week, and he was like, aha, I have a way to get on the back lot. What he did was, one day, dressed really nice, he got a clipboard, and at lunchtime, he walked in with the crowd. That was your son. And so what he would do is, every single day he did that, he would walk out of the guard gate, and he would make sure that he would wave to those guards. So you got facial recognition. So now it was no longer at lunchtime that he had to walk through those gates. He could walk through anytime. And then he ended up getting a job as a tour guide, and I know Mark Pirro is going to talk about that. But I have a really cool story about Glenn as a tour guide. I think this was probably about 2004. We're sitting there talking one day. We're busy, clicking our keyboard, moving our mouse around, and he starts telling me about how he used to work as a tour guide on at Universal Studios. And he starts telling me the story like, I had the best tour. I had the best tour on the back lot. Everybody loved my tour. He goes, when some of the stories I would tell, he goes, he'd be in the front on a microphone saying, okay, here's the bungalows over here where Steven Spielberg had his bungalows. And he looks over to the right and he goes, and over here, there's this big, huge white building. And I said, pause your story for a second. He goes, what? I go, did you used to tell people that if they took a picture of that white building, the Amlin building, that when they developed it, that white building would turn black in film? And he goes, how do you know that story? And I go, well, I was 17 years old. That was 1977. I took your tour. I'm sitting there in the third row back. I have a twin brother. He was sitting next to me. And I look up at my twin brother and I'm like, I look to the front. I look at the building. I look back at the front. All these people are taking a picture of this building. And I'm sitting here thinking, as a 17-year-old, this guy's filling everybody with a whole bunch of bullshit. I can't believe these guys are believing what this guy is saying. And I was just like, he goes, oh. At that point in the conversation, Glenn goes, oh, yeah, I guess you did take my tour. So that was when I was 17. So it was always meant for me to somehow or another cross paths with this gentleman. And that was at Area 51. I worked there for about 7 years. Writer's strike happened. Things had to shut down at Area 51. I started finding work in other places. And ended up working on some really cool films. And then years later, about 10 years ago, I got an opportunity to teach After Effects, the software that Glenn helped me learn. And it was at this school. And I always have talked to him a lot about, thanking him a lot about him teaching me that software. And I remember it was probably like 5 years ago, I was working on a project, and I had lunch with him and a friend of ours, Ken Wilder, and we're out to lunch, and I said, I'm having a problem with this one shot. It's like, just having a very difficult problem with this. He goes, have you tried the new software in After Effects called Content Aware? I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, it just came out yesterday. I go, okay, I'm done with lunch. I went back to my office, finished the shot in 15 minutes. It was taking me about a day and a half to try and come up with a solution. In 15 minutes of Glenn telling me what this was, I had the problem solved. And it was so neat. That was like, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And about 2 years ago, as I called him every now and then, Mr. Campbell gave me a phone call. And he said, Don, he goes, are you still doing tracking? And we had learned kind of tracking together. We were using this software called Buju, and we had just bought this software called PF Track. And we had this shot come in from this film. This guy was hanging upside down, Rescue Don. And this guy, his head was upside down, and as he turned around, we had to put ants on the side of his head. And Glenn was trying to do this in PF Track, in Buju. And I was like, hey, Glenn, you know PF Track has an object tracker? He goes, wait, what? I said, yeah, it's got an object tracker. I said, let me see how this works. So I loaded up a model and kind of pushed it into Christian Bale, who was the actor, kind of formed it into his head. In about 15 minutes, I had the shot tracked. And Glenn was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So years later, like I said, about 2.5 years ago, he calls me up and he goes, hey, Don, he goes, are you still tracking? I said, yep, it's one of my strong points because of you. He goes, I need your skill set on some film over at the asylum. And it was called Headless Horseman, tracking this guy's riding a horse and put a flaming pumpkin head on his head. And I was like, yeah, I just finished with a project. I had been working for about 5 years with a guy named Sean Hart at a company called Silo Effects. And he was like, I need your skills. Can you come in here? I was like, yeah, sure. So I just finished working on this project. I went in and worked with Glenn. 4 weeks later, I had to go back and do another project. And he goes, hey, Don, he goes, if you ever are not working, give me a call. I could always work with you. I would love to work with you anytime. So I spent pretty much the last 2 years working with Glenn. And his desk was, I could throw a piece of paper and hit him. He was a little further away than our little office over on Victory. But it was a joy working with that man. And there's things that we would talk, 7 years plus the last 2 years, going out to lunch with this person, driving down the street, hearing stories from him. If you knew him and you heard some of his stories, they were fantastic. And the love that he had for visual effects and teaching. When we won for the Emmy for Children to Dune, he was gracious enough. He was going to go talk at a school up in San Francisco. And he asked me and Ken, who had just finished working on Children to Dune, hey, you guys want to go with me and talk to the students? We're like, what? This is your thing. He goes, nah, come on along. Talk to the students with me. So he got us to go up there with him, and it was fantastic. It was quite an experience. But I was talking to somebody earlier today, and a couple of days ago, actually, I realized this, is that a couple of people said, gosh, it's really hard that Glenn's gone, not around anymore. Because he would text me at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd get a text from him 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would answer it. I go, what are you doing up? And he goes, why are you answering it? That's the life of a visual effects guy. We work, crazy hours. But we'd always laugh about it. It was like, go to sleep, Glenn. But somebody asked me about Glenn, and I thought about it, that as far as his life, okay, the past 10 years ago, some of you guys know that he had leukemia. He beat that. And I gotta say, the last 10 years, he cheated life. And I think about that he had an extra 10 years that he didn't think he was gonna have. And I'll always remember him as a friend of mine. Glenn, as I often refer to him as Mr. Campbell, Mission Man. Thanks.
Thank you, Don. Glenn had a way of making us all feel special and unique, like when he would send, I'm sure only me, those Facebook messages. I'd like to take a moment for anyone in the audience who has an empty seat next to them. Can you please raise your hands if some of our friends in the back might be, oh, they're looking for new dates, everybody. If you're in the back and you'd like a seat, we have a few more friends sharing their memories. You can get off your feet and settle in using this time now. Don't be shy, come forward. You won't be interrupting any speakers. All right, enjoy your bunions, everybody. I'm wearing heels. I feel like I'm conscious of standing on my feet. Our next friend that we'll be hearing from, please welcome Jean Kozicki.
Again, no notes. So when Harry Cohn passed away, legendary head of Columbia Studios, was a real son of a bitch. Huge Hollywood wedding, or huge Hollywood memorial, large crowd. The story that came out of it was, I can't believe that there are so many people here today. And the other person said, well, give the people what they want and they'll show up. That's not Glenn. Look around, everybody look around. See how many people are here today. They're not here to celebrate his passing. They're here to celebrate his life. That goes to show you the class that he had, the friendship that he had, the character that he had. Everything, quite frankly, that's missing from so many people in this business. And we've all experienced it. And that's why this had such a profound impact on all of us. I was in my garage workshop. I was working on a model earlier this week, thinking about what I would say. And there was an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation on, and it was the one where there was a transporter malfunction. Geordi and Ro are thought to be dead, but in reality, they're just cloaked and out of phase, and technobabble and tachyon fields, all that stuff. Michael Kudo will explain it to you later. Anyway, they somehow manage to come back to life, and they appear at their memorial that they're having, and that's how they come back. And Glenn, if you're just out of phase or you're somehow cloaked, this would be a really good time to just sort of show up here, because we miss you. But I guess we have to deal with reality and not fiction. I'll close by quoting John Cleese when Graham Chapman passed away. He said simply at his memorial, fuck. And that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from another incredible friend. Please welcome Steve Warnick.
Glenn always said to me that like follows like, that certain special people, those that you share the same thoughts with. Glenn is the absolute definition of the Hollywood survivor. From his antics as a tour guide at Universal Studios to working on Tron and the X-Files, all the way to his very happy days at the asylum. You know, you've all heard the stories. Glenn loved what he did, and he always kept doing it. Because deep down, what he was doing was really cool, and it made people happy. Whether it was working on a CGI model of the Enterprise, or making sharks rip through the space-time continuum. He did it just because he could do it. But Glenn, he never wore that Hollywood veneer. he would unabashedly describe himself as just a big nerd doing big nerdy things. He was always humble about what he could do and what his abilities were. He never really projected himself like that, beyond what he thought he was. And there was something that I had been working on for a very long time in audio drama, and I had asked him to direct it for me. And he said, "Are you sure you want me to do this? Are you sure you don't have anyone better in mind? I mean, I know it's really important to you." And I said to him, "That's why I want you, because it is important to me. And we both think alike. And you already know what I want, and I don't have to worry about it." He just smiled back at me, and that just spoke volumes. Glenn never let anything get to him. He was the class act. He was the cool cat. Nothing ever fazed him. He just dusted himself off and kept on going and kept on doing. As Glenn said, like follows like. And here you all are. You followed, magnetized by this man and who he was and still is to all of us. I think for a lot of us, his passing was like a bomb thrown into a very crowded room. But I think Glenn would say to us, guys, when the smoke clears, just dust yourselves off and go do some very big nerdy things. I'll be there.
This next friend and Glenn shared an office for the past 10 years at the asylum. Please welcome Sasha Burrows.
Hello, everyone. I haven't really prepared anything, but just a few words on Glenn. I met him on Bigfoot 2012, and from there he made an impression. Oh, over here. He made a big impression on me, and I considered him a friend and mentor, even when we were occasionally butting heads, because he could be very stubborn on certain issues, and we would go at it, but it was never with, it was always a friendly kind of butting of heads. And he taught me a lot, and we'd be sitting there discussing things. I'd be saying, because I'm from New Zealand, I was like, my dad took me to see this movie, and he'd be like, "Oh, I worked on that." A few months later, you'd go, "Oh, I really like this movie." I'm sort of discussing minutiae of a certain movie, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I did a few days on that movie too." So, but one of the other things that always inspired me that Glenn was he was always interested in learning new things. He transitioned from film into digital, and he was always checking out all the new software. He was like, "Oh wow, we can do this with you can use your phone to motion capture people now," or stuff. And he was very excited about what the potential for generative AI could be. We were playing around with it together, and it's like, it's not quite ready yet. No, that's a bit odd. But he was still having great fun, just enjoying that new kind of technology that was coming down the pipeline. And of course, I would go to lunch with him a lot. And one of the last things we did was he's like, "Dude, I found a new ribs place. It's just up the street. Let's go for a walk there." So we'd go up there and it's called Ribs Against the Machine, and he was so happy. It was the best pork ribs he had had in forever. He was just super happy about it. And yeah, thank you.
This next friend is one of the founding partners of the asylum. Together with David Ramawi and Paul Bales, the asylum was Glenn's last employer for the past 16 years. Please welcome David Ladd.
Oh, goodness. Forgive me. This is new for us. You see, in the asylum universe, the hero never dies. So we're in uncharted territory here. I can't tell you when we first met Glenn. He was kind of like a mythical traveler roaming from one galaxy to the next. Just kind of popped up, worked on a shot, then another, then another. Seemed like he was always just there, always, would be. Embarking knowledge, wise beyond his years, telling a great story, in between creating new ones. When you hear people say, oh, that guy, he lives at the office. Well, that was Glenn. I mean, he literally lived at the asylum. We tried to get him to go home, promise. But there was always one more shot. There's always one more artist to talk to or talk off the ledge. Glenn was part supervisor, part therapist, all friend, pure kindness. For those who don't know, he managed up to 200 shots per week, 52 weeks a year for over 10 years. I swear my partners and I would try very hard to get him to leave, including locking the doors. I think at a certain point we gave up. He loved everything he did, and he loved everyone he did it with. When you hear people say, oh, that guy, he was the heart of the company, that was Glenn to a fault. He touched every aspect of our studio: development, production, post, and even distribution. The studio blood ran through Glenn as everyone demanded a piece of him. And he gave it freely, always with a smile and a story. That's why he was always the last stop on our studio tour. He was always the asylum's biggest cheerleader, showing off the latest monster or technology, or telling people, whoever stopped by, the how-to on one of the 167 movies he helped make for us since 2008. When you hear people say, oh, that guy, he wears his heart out on his sleeve, that was Glenn. There was never a person more beloved, more excited when you got promoted, got to direct, got to write or act, or just do something that you loved. In fact, he might have been more excited than you. He probably bent your ear with examples of other successes, stories, and encouragement, and he was never more happy when he could make you happy. And he was never happier when he could make Tammy happy, who admittedly, he said, wasn't always easy. He told me one time, Lat, she was like a beautiful, wild stallion. She was untamed and runs free. You can't control her. You can't control that. You could only watch and admire. When she lets you in, it's amazing, and she's amazing, and I am so lucky. Those were his words. One more thing to say about Glenn, and it's a personal thing. I bring my son to work once a week because he's a bit of an introvert, and I want him to get used to the work environment. And because Glenn is Glenn, he tapped into that. So every week for over a year, my son and Glenn would go out to lunch together, sometimes just the two of them. I never asked Glenn to do that.
fact, I recently found out that Glenn paid for the lunches out of his own pocket. Glenn would mentor him, made him try new things, pushed him. Who does that? So when you hear people say, oh, that guy, he lifted others up and inspired them to do their best, that was Glenn. My friend, my son's friend, the asylum's friend, and your friend. Thank you.
We have just a few friends sharing their words before we take a brief break, so thank you for your attentiveness. We now have a video message from someone who worked with Glenn, Adam Howard.
Hi folks, Adam Howard here. This is a message for Tammy and for Glenn. First of all, Tammy, we're so incredibly sorry that he's gone, and I'm still finding it very difficult to even kind of comprehend that Glenn Campbell is no longer here. So sending you all our love. Glenn, what do I say? I knew you for well over 30 years. You were one of the funniest men I ever knew, one of the coolest men I ever knew, and you had more stories than anyone, and they were all amazing. Thank you for taking me under your wing and trusting me on all the shows. We did so many great shows together over the years, and I loved every minute of them. Thank you for being my friend. It meant the world to me. And I am so happy that we got to catch up with you in Burbank last year, and that Lauren got to meet you and Tammy, and she got to hear your stories. She loved them all. It just breaks my heart that we're not going to hear anymore. Anyway, you're an amazing human being. You're a wonderful guy. You're an absolute legend in this business. You always will be. And you will be missed by me very much, and by everybody who ever had the pleasure of knowing you. Take care, man. We love you.
Finally, please let me introduce a close friend of Glenn's for decades. Please welcome Mark Pirro.
Hello. I'm going to try and get through this without any emotion. I met Glenn. I actually have a different perspective. I met him as a tour guide at Universal Studios before there was any. Are there any tour guides here, by the way? Like, applause if you were a tour guide. Well, when I first moved out here, I was 18 years old, and I took the Universal tour. And Glenn was the tour guide, but I knew him as Elton. Every tour guide here knows him and still refers to him as Elton. When I would refer to him to other friends and say, yeah, you know, my friend Elton, who the hell's Elton? Oh, he was a tour guide at Universal, and now he's a visual effect. No, you mean Glenn? Oh yeah, Glenn. And it kept getting confusing. Our names changed. I mean, for a long time, I was Mark as tour guide, and then I was Mr. Pleasure. That was another name. I don't know how that came along, but then Glenn was always Elton. Then later it was Elty. Then it was Mr. C, and I was Mr. P, and we would always say, hey, Mr. C, Mr. P. And it's kind of gay, I don't know, but it was weird. But anyway, so I took his tour, you know, and it was a great tour. That was the end of that. Then I got a job in the stunt show, cleaning up after the stuntmen. I wasn't a stunt guy. I was the guy that cleaned up the saliva and things that they left behind. But Glenn would walk by every so often. He'd see me, you know, hanging out at the stunt show, and he struck up a conversation. I said, wait a minute, you were our tour guide. Oh, yeah, and you were a tourist. Yeah, I guess so. And he goes, well, what do you do here? I clean up after the stuntmen. Really? How do you do that? And I showed him, and I got him to actually do it a couple of times. You know, it was fascinating. But fast forward to one day, he said, you know, you should try to be a tour guide. You might have a personality for a tour guide. And I said, well, what do I do? He goes, you just, you know, you read the book, you learn about movies, and you talk about it. And so I took his tour again, and I recorded it. I just recorded the audio of it, and I memorized it. word for word. So when it was time for me to be tested, what they did is they put all the tour guides in a tram and then go along the tour route and say, okay, you do the next 5 minutes or you do the next 5 minutes. And when whatever spot they got to, having memorized his tour, I basically nailed it and I got the job and I was a tour guide and we had this great little routine because sometimes any of you tour guides would remember, they would go down to a sound stage and they would bring two tours groups together to get them through the sound stage, you know, as one giant group. And I used to say, knowing that he was going to follow me to the group, I would say, we're going to double up now, and you have to remember my name. My name is Mark. I have a twin brother who's coming down in a few minutes. And a lot of people have made the mistake of going with the wrong tour guide. So just remember, you're with Mark. We look very much alike. Okay, fine. He'd come down, you know, 7 foot tall, black guy, and they'd get the joke. But then Glenn, without missing a beat, would usually say, "Oh, Mom wants you to bring home a loaf of bread." I've known him for most of my life. I was 19 when we met. Then he got into special effects. Prior to that, though, I started making little dog and pony movies. So, you know, I would get a Super 8 movie camera, and I'd start making these little, you know, short films. And he was fascinated. Let's work on it together. So my very first film was a movie called Buns. It's about a killer hamburger eater. And Glenn's dubious position was to be an actor in this movie. You might find the trailer on YouTube somewhere. I don't know, it might be up there, but he was kind of, he went under the name of G. Glenn Campbell because, you know, he didn't want to be known as an actor in a movie called Buns. But we worked on it together. It was a short little film, and it was sweet. And then the next film we did was a James Bond parody. We were both James Bond fans back in the days when James Bond was handsome. But so we made this film, and he helped with the title sequence because we, you know, wanted to make a James Bond title sequence. But that was like the first time he had done a visual effect for my film, or probably for any film at that point. This is the early 70s. So as time went by, every movie I made about a dozen films. Some of them are featured. You probably never heard of any of them. But most of these films, he worked on every single one of them and never asked for any kind of pay. And there was also a time when I guess he thought, let's teach a man to fish. And he taught me some visual effect work so that I could do some of my own stuff. Anyway, there's a lot I can say about Glenn, and I'm not, you guys have been sitting here long enough. So I put together a tribute video. I have a lot of archival footage. I used to carry a camera around long before they were in telephones. I mean, I would have cameras and I would film anything, anybody, oh, glass of water, okay. So I'd have these Christmas and Thanksgiving parties. We called them the orphans party because a lot of us didn't have family out here. And for years, we would invite ex-tour guides, current tour guides, people that wanted to be a part of it. So I would take a lot of video, and I had hours of footage to go through to give you a perspective of Glenn that you probably haven't seen before. It's there's a lot of personal bits in here, some funny, some maybe a little in poor taste. I tried to tone it down a little bit. But so you're going to see a perspective of Glenn that probably those of you that worked in visual effects, you know, didn't see. This is more of the personal side. It's sort of a love letter from me to him. So roll it. Thank you.
I'm Glenn Campbell. I'm one of Mark's oldest friends in Los Angeles. We've known each other since we were tour guides. That's how we met. That and the fact that we were in jail together. I was top bunk, by the way, just for the record. not the same young, virile guy I used to be. I mean, you know, hanging out with Mark, gray hair, it'll do it to you. Mark has a lot too, but he's using Miss Clairol to hide it.
Thank you. Homo.
Can't act for beans. He got his acting degree out of a Cracker Jacks box, but he's a good person. Even though he may get killed, mugged in New York by all of the wicked people there, I'm sure that he'll be okay, because God looks out for stupid people, and John certainly qualifies.
Thanks, bro. All right, tell your friends and go again.
I just want to get a shot of the one person in this room that he's shorter than.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. I bet he's better at basketball.
Silly. That'll never happen again. Yeah.
It's come to this. It's a very strange position to be in. I mean, this is exactly the kind of job I used to have nightmares about winding up in. Who are you? 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Mark and I are here.
Yes, we were notorious for causing all kinds of trouble.
We almost had the same name for a while, so it's Campbell. Yeah, this is almost incest.
Well,
Hey, what's up?
What is that? Hi, David Shoeshine here on the set of the new motion picture Buns. Hi, here is a typical Pirro fan, a person who goes to see a Pirro film every chance he gets. Tell me, sir, what is it that you see in Pirro movies?
Two all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickle. You're the hamburger killer.
William, what's wrong?
Rex, you're the hamburger killer.
William, what are you saying?
It's true. Look at yourself.
Two all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce.
We've got to do something. I think the best time I ever had on a Paramount film was working on The Spy Who Did It Better and doing the title sequence. We had a bunch of topless women cavorting around in Mark's apartment, which is where we shot the title sequence. And I remember the lead actress, I believe, was also in the title sequence. She rears up into camera with her back to us and starts doing these sort of like martial arts moves. And then when she turns sideways, we got this clear silhouette of her breast. And here we are, like two little kids going, "Oh, wow, we can see boobs."
Second unit director here, Mr. Glenn Campbell, is telling us how to steal the right shots for Rec Tuma, and of course, under the witness
Get all
of
the shots that we needed.
We're on like a big movie set here, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
This is a pilot that may or may not air in October.
He called me up and said, hey, you know, there's a bunch of people that are rioting. Maybe we could like take some of these shots and put them in Rec Tuma.
I want to get the cops blocking everything, and after this is all said and done, you need to get another shot of this empty street without the people. Don't worry about the people.
I do want to point out, though, my good friend Glenn Campbell in the back there. Now this is going on his resume. Okay.
I love you. I've loved all your old movies. You're awesome. The thing, this is gonna work. And this is gonna look good.
Okay, I'll take your word for that.
Yeah.
How can you do that?
do what?
Be here in my house.
You invited me in.
Let's get him and just have one lie down on the green screen. And you just shoot them as high as you can. We can get a sideways shot.
All of them together?
No, they can't do that. Just one at a time, but we can put them next to each other. We just shoot them, let them just lay down, and
Now bring the arms down. They're looking at each other. Okay, here we go. Can we get a little fan on him without moving the?
let's pull Jesus' robe down.
Excellent.
Well done, lads.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you for the green screen.
My friend Glenn Campbell passed out the other day and had to go to the hospital twice, passed out twice the other day, and we're not completely sure what the problem is, but I came here today out of utter concern and interest, and because I need some visual stuff I have to pick up.
I have not had bacon for a full week. 1 full week I have not touched any bacon.
See, finally came up. Just 1 week.
No, and prior to that, I had it frequently, but not every day. Just a lot.
If you want to physically abuse him again, I can get it on camera for the arraignment.
First they thought I was just dehydrated. Then after they got the blood test back and realized that I had accelerated abnormal levels of white blood cells, which indicated clearly that my kidneys were not cleaning my blood as thoroughly as they should. They weren't doing it at peak capacity. It wasn't at a level where it's like, you're gonna die, but it's like, this shouldn't be here, we need to look further. So today, I'm going to go back. But because I'm such a dedicated guy, and Mark is such a good buddy, I have called him over here because I'm going to pass the torch and give him the effects scenes that I started working on. In case I drop dead in the hospital, Mark will be able to finish his film without me.
Is if anything does happen to you, then, you know, this footage will obviously become much more valuable.
To whom? I mean, it's not like, you know, there's going to be, like, this will be shown at the wake going, look, he didn't even know it was coming. He looked healthy.
Yes, it'll be the next memorial on the Marky Fun tape.
No.
You can have it in your hand.
I want to see it.
Oh, of course, you're going to take it to the restaurant?
Well, my mom wants to see it.
Yes, look at this guy. Ed.
We're sitting there, and we got Emmys all around the table. It's like, yeah, we must have done something good. And the best part is they're not labeled yet.
Oh, that's right, you have to give it back, don't you? And get it.
No, they're going to send them to us. They send you a plaque that you put in there. Every time we saw a pretty girl, we're going, that's right, producer, yeah, or, you know, yeah, actor, best actor, yep.
Yesterday, you missed our screening.
Yes.
We had our little thing, and I was given an award. The Oscar Award.
Oh my God.
And this was...
Jeez, that's great.
So this was presented to me. I said, I know he's going to have his Emmy, so I'm bringing this today, and this is my award. So
It is brilliant. Wow. I worked for a company called Area 51, and we were a small boutique, and I started in visual effects in 1978. I'm old. When Sharknado started, you know, we got the script and we were told we're doing Sharknado, and we were like, what is that? And they said, it's exactly what you think it is. Okay, so it was indeed sharks dropping out of a tornado onto Los Angeles, and normally we have anywhere from 75 to 100 and change shots. Sharknado wound up being about 300 or something along those lines. It was a very complicated show. What can I say? I have acute leukemia. It started out of nowhere. God hates me for hanging around with Mark. I think he was aiming for Mark, and he struck me down.
Well, we're going to make sure that you get through this, and when do you want me to buy you like a bandana or anything? Or
No.
You could be like one of those tough guys with the bandanas.
No, I'm going to go ball with dignity and, you know, just throw up on everybody as the chemo takes effect.
Can I get a shot of your finger? And I want you to go, ouch.
Just like that, very gently. That's literally all I've been asking for them to do, is just give me this.
Really?
Because it feels so much better.
All right. So this is actually feeling good?
Yeah, this is really feeling good. It's just for the physical therapy. I don't care what they shoot me up with. It's like, guys, I just need something to physically move things around.
So Glenn, have you ever experienced man love before? Like this, at least? No?
Not openly. But
I've known him for 40 years. This is the most contact I think I've ever had with any man in my... Well, no, there was one time in Philadelphia.
When John got struck down, in the prime of life, John McCafferty, Mr. Health Nut. We were confused because we thought this man has literally never even glanced at a hospital, never needed to because he's so healthy. So we thought, you don't suppose it was God taking a shot at Mark and missing? And the thought crossed our minds and we sort of thought about it, but nah, it couldn't be. Now, Mark's other best friend, literally standing on the other side of him, has been stricken down. We are now positive, absolutely positive, that God is a raving incompetent and that he's trying to hit Mark, definitely trying to kill Mark, and he is missing horribly. He struck down both his friends, but he has missed the actual direct target.
Okay, well, here I am again, rubbing my buddy's leg, only this time we're using icy fingers because my fingers were a little too hot. So doing this little leg massage thing, which tell them that you're not doing this I'm not doing this out of blackmail or anything.
I actually feel fine. The only reason I'm doing this is to get video of Mark doing it.
So Agnes is telling me, don't worry, you're going to get through this. God has a plan for you. This is all purpose in the hope. And I said, okay, so hold on for a second. You're telling me Tuesday morning God got up and said, okay, universe spinning, yep, doing great. Galaxy spinning, Solar system, yep, right on target. Earth, looking good. Glenn Campbell, cancer. I said, that's what you're telling me. And she's, it's all part of God's will. I said, I don't want to worship that God. Sorry, we have a problem. We have an adversarial situation.
He's best.
Well, yesterday I went to the hospital and the doctors gave me the last final status report. They got my bone marrow test back and my blood test and said, you are completely clean. They used the R word for the very first time officially. You are in full remission. You are in complete normal health. Every stat across the board for your blood, your organs, everything, you are back to where you were. You're healthy.
So
no malignant cells detected. So I am actually back to where I was literally a year ago.
wow. Well, that's our Christmas present. We get him for another year at least.
Yeah, you have to put up with me one more time.
Yay! And what do you have to say about all that?
I'm very happy about all that.
That's right. You helped nurse him back to health.
I tried.
I rubbed his freaking leg.
I rubbed his knee too.
You did too.
I rubbed his knee too.
Yeah, but you probably got more out of it than I did.
I got more out of it than he did.
No, but special thanks to my mom. That she was the anchor that kept me going.
This lady right here?
Camera had me.
Huh?
Where's that camera had me?
I'm sorry, he's talking about you though.
I know.
And so if he's talking about you, we got to show who he's talking about.
I know.
Because then they're going to say, who's he talking about?
No, I don't want to say that.
Who's he talking about?
He's talking about this lady here.
Oh,
Okay.
I was going to guess that.
Well, now you know. Well, this is a great day to end the video that I didn't know how we were going to put together. When we started this, I'm thinking, oh geez, another tribute video. I had two of them.
Hey, realistically, that could have happened.
You should see how wonderful the tribute video actually turned out.
That you made for me in case I died?
Just in case, because that.
Did you make one? You did, didn't you? You
No,
bastard.
I didn't.
It brought a tear to my eye. I'm like, oh my God, that's beautiful.
Yes, Kitty. Yeah, I better make it now before he actually dies, and I'll be crying, and I won't be able to edit it properly.
Exactly.
You know, that's actually not a bad idea. Like this.
I'm going to play it at your funeral.
Yeah.
In fact, I should do that with everybody. Have it ready to go. Like,
I was inspired by Glenn to do this.
That's right. Yeah, every tribute will be. This is dedicated to the memory of Glenn Campbell.
I'm very proud of Mark. I mean, I taught Mark a handful of things in Photoshop and After Effects, and he has gone so far past that on his own. And sometimes I go, oh, you did that.
You two are so cute.
Oh, we're so cute. Aw, see, what do you think, huh?
That was cute.
Thank you, everyone. We will be taking a short break to stretch your legs, grab a snack, use the restroom, and if you'd like to come up and say a short story about Glenn, we'll have time for that after. So please stay in the area and enjoy a break for now.
So while they're doing that, I've got another Glenn story that came up, remembering as being a tour guide. So Glenn took his tour guide thing to an extreme level in a certain way that was pure Glenn. And it wasn't this gentleman who had talked. I think his name was Mark. They'd worked out a deal where Mark became a passenger on the second vehicle and Glenn was on the front doing the narration, and they came to Jaws Lake. And the other tour guide, Glenn's friend, who was pretending to be just a tourist, got in an argument with Glenn over things that were going on. And Glenn got so mad theatrically that he actually got out and walked along the running board to the tram back to where his friend was and grabbed him and threw him into the lake. And that was the cue that they worked out for the driver then to drive on and leave the guy in the lake with the shark coming towards him. And Glenn said he never heard as quiet a group of audience on the tram after that. But that was pure Glenn, and he could pull that off in a way that Glenn would still be able to do that, something that nobody else. And I learned that actually from him because I had a Ford van at the time. And when we'd shoot at the lot, half the time I'd leave by driving through Jaws Lake, because you drive the sensor and you could drive through it with my big van. And we'd have the doors open and watch through it. And Glenn was then describing as a tour guide what we were seeing while we're on our way back out to Heartland. Adam, I thought your piece was wonderful. It actually brought a tear to mine, and I see some of the others' eyes.
I don't know, we just worked on some. The first time I worked with him was at Digital Magic, and I was compositing there on the Harry system, and he came in, and I think one of the first shows was Viper. We were doing all kinds of weaponry off the side of the car for that show, and then Children of Dune, and lots of other ones over the years. But yeah, he's amazing. It was great because when we went and saw them last year, it was Lawrence, and one of her favorite films as a kid was Spaceball. So to be able to sit with Glenn and hear him talking about the stories of, driving the Moco camera into the miniature and destroying it. It was just an amazing thing for her to be able to hear those, from the horse's mouth. That she loved Spaceballs a couple of years ago. He emailed me a bunch of storyboards from the film, and yeah, just amazing. Hard to believe he's gone.
I had a similar story, Adam, where we were chatting about just the stuff that he had done, and he was when we were at the asylum, and he comes in one day and he hands me this binder, and he goes, "Oh," and then I'm looking through the binder, and it's stuff from Blade Runner. And he goes, "Yeah, this is my actual production Bible from Blade Runners. There's Ridley Scott's notes in the corner." And I immediately threw my hands up and I went, "I shouldn't be touching this. This should be in a museum. Why do you have this?"
Right.
And just talking to people since his passing, I'm like, someone needs to sort of go through the mountains of stuff that Glenn has accrued and put together some sort of traveling exhibit, because he just has so much film lore that he's managed to save over the years. You know, stuff that would have just disappeared otherwise.
So, I didn't know Glenn as long as many of you. I think we first met in 2009 when he was doing real reviews at school. When I first moved out to LA, without a job, without a plan, freaked my parents out. I hit him up just to see if he knew of anyone hiring. And he really didn't at the time, but he was just so kind. He showed me around LA. He showed me his favorite spots. Showed me where to get the best ramen. Showed me the place that had bacon on donuts. He was just such a good and kind friend. And then years later, when I had my first big budget job doing effects on Winter Soldier, I was feeling so out of my depth and like I was just horribly underleveled and everyone was so much better than me. And I talked to him and I don't even remember what he said, but afterwards I felt like it was all okay. I was going to get through this. I was going to do this. So I was going to succeed. And I feel like there are very few people that can touch others' lives like that and just always be a positive influence. He was never jaded, despite how long he'd been doing it. He wasn't bitter, like so many of us.
I just wanted to say something real quick about Glenn. I think all of us acknowledge how incredible he was in terms of his ability to work with new technologies that came about throughout his life and to always have that childlike wonder and fascination with the possibilities that Hollywood offered to make magic. And I think Glenn, he was able to convey that childlike wonder to the people that he interacted with. And as other people have pointed out, Glenn was a giant nerd. But being a giant nerd isn't what made Glenn exceptional, because there's a lot of giant nerds among us. What's exceptional is the fact that most giant nerds are really into things. And the thing that made Glenn exceptional, and the reason why so many of us are here, is because he was a real rarity in that he wasn't just into things, he was into people. And he showed that same love for the stories of the people in his life that he did for the technology that let us do what we were doing. And he had that same passion for each of the individuals here, I think, he shared his moments with that he did for every new toy that he stumbled across. And as somebody who had a chance to talk about both new technologies and the people in his lives and the experiences that he had with Glenn, I feel blessed. I'm very thankful that, for some brief little period of time, I got to spend time with Glenn. I mean, I've known him for 30 years, but I didn't really get the chance to spend as much time with them up until fairly recently, the past couple of years, as I probably wish I would have now. And for all of us out there who be blessed with a little bit of time, both in talking about the wonders of the world that we all were exploring together, and then the wonders of each other, which he was really good at recognizing and making us recognize in both ourselves and in the people around us. I'm very thankful to have known Glenn. So.
Oh, sorry. Pull out the mic. I met Glenn about 20 years ago thanks to Mark Pirro and his Orphans Thanksgiving. Can you hear me in the back? Good. Glenn was the epitome of being a gentleman. I walked up to him because, we had something in common. You guys had filled in the blanks for what it was. And I was about to say hello. He said, "Good day to you, sir." I'm like, okay. Nobody had ever called me sir before, and I dug it. And he dug the shrimp fettuccine I made for him. So, I bought this shirt, and the first thing I thought was Glenn Campbell would make one hell of a movie out of this shirt. And if you can't see it, it's a picture of Bigfoot taking a selfie in front of his UFO. If that's not a Glenn Campbell movie, I don't know what is, because it encapsulated all the different things he liked and loved. To this day, we never settled the argument on if a hot dog is a sandwich or not. That's the type of stuff we would talk about, and movies, and TV, and comic books. And It had been almost 7 years since I'd seen him last, but when I last saw him, we picked up like we had seen each other yesterday. And that's the type of dude he was. And he was such a bright light. And I'm trying to get through this without crying. The world's a little dimmer that he's not here, but I feel a little brighter inside. Having met him. So, I miss you, bro.
Hi. Glenn and I, Tom, we went to high school together. I've known Glenn for, since high school. And as I was sitting here and I was listening to the tributes and the stories, it just dawned on me that since I've known Glenn all these years, I have never heard him say an unkind word about anybody. He was that type of person. We went to high school and we were roommates, and I remember the tour guide stories. And I just like to say that Tammy called and gave us sad news. She mentioned that Glenn was in the hospital and they had this new way of finding the blood veins, and there was a light shining the blood veins, and he was just so thrilled about that. And he was just cracking up about that. He just thought that was just so marvelous and stuff like that. And I said, Glenn was Glenn to the end. Thank you.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeremy. I've known Glenn for nowhere near as long as probably most of you. And yet, I feel as if I knew him for probably the same amount of time. I met Glenn working as the officially assistant editor for the Asylum. Every time there's a movie that ever came through, I was the one that was always there overnight, merging the clips, making the dailies, and every time Glenn would always come walking by the assistant editor's office. Similarly, like the gentleman mentioned earlier, hello, sir. How are you doing this evening? I would always say the same good line, how you doing? Oh, another day, another dollar. There's obviously so much that we can all agree about Glenn. He's a titan of this industry, a friend, a confidant. But there was something that Don actually posted on Facebook shortly after Glenn's passing that resonated with me. We talked about earlier today, which is that Glenn was a tour guide for Universal. And for me, there was never a day where I was at the asylum, day or night, where Glenn wasn't sharing a story with me, even if it was unwarranted, and even if it was for the 5th, 6th, 7th, or sometimes even 8th time. I never had the heart in me to tell him, I gotta go. Because even though it would always be the same story, there would always be some new detail that he would add in that wasn't in the aforementioned ways that he would tell him. And similarly, I wrote a script for Asylum, and one day I was in there doing notes for him. And one of the gentlemen, I won't mention his name, but he told me, he's like, I gotta go down and get a drink. You want anything? And I'm like, no, that's okay. I figured he'd be back up in a few minutes. About half an hour later, he finally arrived, and I'm like, what happened to you? And he's like, piece of advice. If you're ever in a rush, don't talk to Glenn. Glenn was someone that always took care of me. As well as my girlfriend, Alicia, who she worked as administrative assistant every day. He would always make sure she was doing okay. And every night, he would always make sure that I was doing okay. Actually, when Sasha mentioned the Rips Against the Machine story, he made me whole. He said, Jeremy, you've got to try this. And I did, like so many times, where he's giving me a free lunch or a free meal, and as always, I think, he's like, oh, it's no trouble at all. It's the least I can do. You're hard at work. So Tammy and his mom, I know how I feel. And I've already been working there, and it's like David Ladd said earlier, he was the heart of that place, and it already feels so empty. And I know how it's hurting me, and I cannot imagine how much it's hitting you. But please know, as you can clearly see, he was loved, and he will be missed. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. There's one term I can apply to love and Glenn. It's infectious enthusiasm. I knew Glenn in high school. We graduated from Hollywood High together in 1974. And 50 years ago today, we worked together on primitive experiments in effects and animation at my dad's apartment in West Hollywood. If it wasn't for Glenn, I never would have gone into a career in special effects and animation. Glenn was so influential, I changed my college major, okay? I never would have become a technical director at a motion graphics company. I never would have worked at ILM on a Spielberg picture or a Star Trek 6. Adjectives that are synonymous with Glenn, which I've being done inspiring, enthusiastic, influential, gregarious, intellectually rigorous, and a lover of inside information. I think you'll agree he was the most extroverted nerd we've ever known. A man of limitless curiosity, and he spread his magic everywhere. And I'll never forget that voice. That voice which punctured the air with its presence, as distinctive in its own way as Paul Frees or Mel Blanc. How far would Glenn have gotten without that voice? It's amazing. In recent years, Glenn and I went our separate ways, but I still like to have lunch with him in Burbank now and then. He was a tremendously uplifting and exhilarating factor in my life, and I'm sure you have the same feelings. Thank you.
Well, I certainly haven't known Glenn as long as some of those people, but I've known Glenn many, many years. I've worked with the Asylum and provide all the technical equipment for the servers and the VFX systems. And every time I come in, whether it's 2 in the morning or whatever it is, Glenn's always there, always showing me new kinds of visual effects. He's going to do some animation that's going to create this AI platform that's going to put everyone out of work except for him. And the last week it was like I came by to replace something at the Asylum, and we started talking about Star Wars, and he was showing me these review sites of how on the different Star Wars we were talking about which ones he wanted and some of that. And I want to reflect actually, everyone concentrates on things on like the day we're born and the day we die, right? We all think about when we're born and then the day we die. But in between those 2 days is where we really make ourselves. What is in between those dates? That's what makes us really there. And as I came here and saw all these people here, and all these stories here, Glenn filled dates of his death and his birth with all of you and all the stories that you've been sharing. All night I've been hearing the stories. And that's the true magic of what Glenn brought, was he filled those 2 days with all of you and the love and support that we all had for Glenn. And Glenn loved us as much as we loved him. And I will miss the man forever and ever. Thank you.
Hello. Glenn and I have a New Jersey connection. His mom, Miss Campbell, a good friend of mine, Tony Underwood, grew up with Glenn. He's another unable to be here. And Tony and I went to college together. We graduated college together in New Jersey. And in 2005, I took a leap of faith from New Jersey, small town, to come out to LA to do movie posters and all that. And Tony said to me, "Oh, you gotta meet my friend Glenn. You gotta meet Glenn. He's a nerd like you. You gotta meet Glenn." So he puts me in contact with him. I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." So I'm here in LA, bouncing around on interviews at Stan Winston, Saban, Digital Domain. And then I go to meet Glenn at Area 51. And here comes this big teddy bear guy, comes out, and he's like, "Aaron, hey, how you doing, man? Hey, come on in, meet the gang." And I'm like, yeah, like, totally hit it off. I just felt his likable energy. And he brings me in, I meet Tim, and I meet all the guys, and so this is my first time seeing the industry, because all my years of working in New York City, it was corporate America, suit, tie, 9 to 5 over there. I worked in the fashion industry. And Glenn shows me, he introduced me to everyone, and he shows me all this cool stuff he's making, and we're geeking out, we're talking about cartoons and quoting movies, just mindless quotes and animation, and I'm like, "Oh, this guy is me." Like, what the? And I'm like, "Who are you, dude?" And we just, I always say he's a mutant. You meet Glenn, and you instantly like him, and he likes you. And so we're hanging out there, and like 2 hours go by, and they're looking at my art, and they're like, "Oh man, they worked on Blade Runner. I did this Blade Runner painting," and they're like, "Wow, we love your work. You gotta come out here to LA." And so I'm like, "So you guys are in jeans and shirts all day, and you make cool stuff, and they pay you for it?" I was in heaven with Glenn. And he's like, "You want to see the James Bond trailer?" And I was like, "Well, how do you do that?" Well, I'm like, "What?" Yeah. And I was in heaven. And from then on, we would just, have lunch wherever we can. And I remember my first time meeting Tammy, and we all, had lunch at the, it was Brazilian, all you can eat place in Burbank. We love New York, and all, the more the merrier. Yeah. I'm like, "Where's something like this?" Yeah, and I'll never forget that day. I mean, when I came to your office, and I was like, "These guys are the coolest guys I've met on the planet, because they make cool stuff." And yeah, it was. And so I just recently been texting Glenn to do some effects for my stepfather who's working out. I said, "I need some Top Gun effects." He goes, "Well, I can help you, man, but I probably know some people who can." I said, "I get it. You got a better fish to fry. I get it, man. I get it." And when I lived in LA, I lived in Palms. I lived near Sony. And I said, "Let's get together." He goes, "Okay." He goes, I'm not coming. I'm not coming to LA. You got to come here. I'm like, "I always come to see you. How come you don't come over here?" He's like, "Well, I'm just, I said, "Okay, so you're like this valley snob, right?" And he said, "Yeah, I know." But I didn't mind. I just, anything to say. He was my first friend I met in LA, and I'm gonna miss him. And he was, what I see here, it's just a reflection of him. And rest in the galaxy life. Love you.
I'm Caitlin, and my parents are Tim and Leilani McHugh, who are friends of Glenn since college. So since I came many years later, I've known him my entire life. And what I take from his beautiful life is what a wonderful friend that he was to my parents and then back. He was a true example of always showing up when you need a friend, and we did that for each other, and I'll take that into every friendship of my life. He lived his passion for filmmaking. And to be able to live your dream like that, I think is a really beautiful thing too. He loved fully, and he's loved back, and that is all. Thank you.
So I'm her mother and Tim's wife. So I just, since she came up here, I wanted to give her a slightly different perspective of Glenn, only because we've known him as Uncle Glenn throughout our children's lives. So just two really quick stories about Glenn. So Glenn, giant Glenn, 5-year-old son, just started taking karate lessons. Glenn, being Uncle Glenn, he was being really funny when he had a toy that my son wanted, and he said, "Bet you can't get this." My smart-ass 5-year-old son knew exactly how. He knew where to punch to get Uncle Glenn to double over. He got his toy. Second story has to do with my daughter. When my daughter was in junior high, she played basketball at school. And one afternoon, I got a phone call saying, "Your daughter got hurt, and she needs to be taken to the hospital." I was in the middle of working. Glenn was working with my husband closer than I was. Glenn said, "Let's get into the car," to my husband, and they shot over to pick up my daughter from school because she had hurt her arm. Tim will correct me if I'm wrong about this, but Glenn broke all rules, driving on the freeway, crossed out of the HOV lane, got himself a ticket to get my daughter to the emergency room. He never ever told either of us about how much that ticket cost. But Glenn was family. It's family. And that's how he was to us and always will be something Glenn. So, thank you.
I think all of us can relate to, at some point or another in the industry, particularly in this industry, you have a moment or two where you really feel like you're kind of at a dead end, where you feel kind of beaten down, and you hit a rough patch in life, and you can't really, you might not even want to get out of bed on a given day. And the one thing that I remember the most is that I've had some of those moments, and I remember thinking, "Oh, but I get to go into the office today, and I know Glenn is going to be there, and I'm going to walk away recharged again." And at the end of those days, I'd walk away going, "Man, am I lucky. Man, do I have it good. He is just awesome. I could listen to those war stories forever." That's all. That's the last impression, the lasting impression that I've got, and it's been an honor. I am very, very happy. Thank you.
My name is Bill, and I used to work at the asylum. Well, it sounds like recovery. And during my time at the asylum, I was a stage manager there for a little while. And I was so proud to work at the asylum, and I'm from the magical land, originally I'm from the magical land of Sacramento. So when people would come through town, you would give them a tour of the asylum, and it was, it blew their minds, you know, giant sharks and all this kind of things. And when everybody says that Glenn was the guy to make on the last stop of the tour of the asylum, it was true, because Glenn then made you into a Hollywood mogul, a celebrity of some kind, because he would immediately plop them down in a seat and do the thing that you see on DVD special features, and immediately show you all of the stages of a special effect. All of the visual effects, and you'd be like, now this is what we do when we composite here. This is when we add the skin. This is the machinery of the thing. And they were absolutely blown away, and they would walk away, and I would look like I really made it in the industry. And I'll always be grateful to him for that. But the story that I want to tell about Glenn, I've told a few people here, so in Glenn fashion, I'm going to tell it again. And this was like my favorite, like, oh, that's him moment. And when, at the asylum, when you're the stage manager, at the first meeting of the month, you get to do birthday treats for whoever has a birthday that month. And so you go around, you ask everybody what they want for a treat. And so you would go around, and then most of the time it was cupcakes, you know, pie, ice cream, milkshakes, stuff like that. And you would get enough for everybody. And so I went to Glenn, and this was after he beat cancer. And I went up and I was like, hey man, it's birthday month. What do you want for your treat? And he goes, oh, like it was new. Like he knew this happened every month. He goes, oh, bacon. No, man, it's like, no, it's like ice cream or cake or like donuts or like, what? And he goes, yeah, bacon. Well, I mean, but don't you have like bacon every day? Can't you have bacon every day? And he goes, you can have all of those other things every day too. I want bacon. And I was like, this dude just kicked the crap out of cancer. Well, of course he's getting bacon. You have to have a lot of bacon because you got to get enough for everybody. But I don't cook bacon. So the assistant stage manager was like, I'm good at it. We brought in like 4 or 5 skillets and hot plates, and we set them up on the other side of the street where there was the sound stage, and just went to town cooking bacon for a while. So anybody who worked on that side of the street was in heaven that day. And we came into the meeting that day with 10 platters of bacon. And if you didn't know Glenn, you were really confused. But everybody who knew Glenn was like, oh, it's bacon. Of course it is. And we walk in with all the bacon, and there's Glenn. And he goes, whoa, bacon. I was like, yeah, you said you wanted it. And he goes, well, I didn't think you'd actually do it. And to me, that's Glenn. He was magical and joyful, and that's why I'm always going to think about him. So,
all right, I know I was up here before, shorter, quicker. I can almost feel Glenn's unease as to all the seriousness and sadness that we're sharing. And everyone has mentioned that basically, if you met Glenn, you loved him, and you knew him. I was with Glenn one time, when we met someone who seemed terrified by Glenn Campbell. He seemed like he couldn't get away from us fast enough, but I'll set it up for you. We're at 20th Century Fox going to a meeting. We're walking along, and Glenn saw someone he recognized from Copland. Glenn was one of the few people on the planet that watched and somehow loved cop rock. And he looked at this fellow and said, oh, you want cop rock? And this poor actor's eyes lit up the size of animated cartoons. And he was terrified. I thought he was going to jump under a truck that was next to us. Because he was like, don't tell anybody I worked on cop rock. Oh my God. So, that one time, that did happen. Glenn terrified somebody. But it's because he was a fan. He loved cops. What can I say? Anyway, thank you. I'm going to hand this over to David. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that wants to come up before we say goodbye to this room? All right. Well, then come on up.
I'm Michelle Massey. I was lieutenant lad at Area 51, otherwise known as 1/3 of the Visual Effects Ops Squad. And stories. One of the stories that he really loved to tell was when they went to go work on Spaceballs. Were you in the Spaceballs meeting, Tim? Where'd it go? Was Tim in the Spaceballs meeting? No, that was him and Broderick, right? So they go to do Spaceballs, and they're going to meet Mel Brooks, right? So they're all excited, and they can't wait. And these two guys are funny in their own right, so they can't wait to get in with Mel. And one of Mel's people walks in, and he says, sit down. Here's what you need to know. Mel is funny, you are not. Mel tells a joke, you laugh. You don't try to top it, you don't try to beat it. Mel is funny, you are not. So that sort of became the thing at Area 51. We all thought we were hilarious, but when there was a clinker in the bunch, we would just simply look at them and very deadpan say, Mel is funny, you are not. And the other one was, this is in the no good deed goes unpunished category. We really tried not to do things for free because that's how you get punished the most. But they came to us from NPR and we were like, oh, NPR, we love NPR. Do NPR. And they're like, great. Here's this daytime picture of this Japanese warship from the 1500s. Can you kind of liven this up a little bit? And we're looking, it's a still. And we look at this going, So Glenn, in his magic, turns it night, sets it on fire, adds a little rock to the boat, makes the water move, puts the reflection of the fire in the water. It was one of the most beautiful shots I've ever seen. From one little crack and still. I still can't believe it to this day. It was just amazing. And they said, we love it. Thank you, we love it. When you tilt down, hold on the reflection for 9 seconds. Now that's like, I don't know, 400 views in Dodgers. We're like, listen, you don't want to do that. You don't want to stay on the flames for 9 seconds. That's like a million years in springtime. Please don't do this. No, we know what we want. Okay. So of course I get on the computer and I write a memo and I send it. We highly advise that you don't hold for 9 seconds. No, we're going to do this. Okay. We send off the shot, we're all happy, we did this big deed for NPR. It's 6 o'clock on a Friday night. I have one arm in the sleeve of my jacket as we're getting ready to leave, and the phone rings. Why did you hold on this for 9 seconds? Well, we told you that this was a bad idea. Glenn is standing there, and he goes completely deadpan without missing a beat. Have they ever heard the word cut? Godspeed, Brother Campbell.
Anyone else?
Well, thank you everyone for coming out today. It's been a joy to, wait, we have one more? Here we go. Hi. To give you a sense of the passage of time, I am the 5-year-old from the previous story that my mom gave. I'm TJ McHugh. So one of my favorite memories of Uncle Glenn is we would go on ski trips up to Mammoth a lot, and he would often be the one to help me down as I was maybe 10 years old. And there was one time when I saw a really cool ski lift, and honestly, that was the only reason why my childhood self wanted to go on that particular ski lift. And it ended up being that the route down was a double black diamond, and I wasn't that good at skiing, and honestly, neither were any of us that were on that trip. But I remember Uncle Glenn, both of us just kind of sat on our asses and like shuffled our way down and kind of steep back. And they very much said, don't ever do that again. And I didn't. So anyway, that's my good old Uncle Glenn story. Thank you very much.
Hi there, my name is Jonathan Lee. I work with Glenn starting back on Tron. This is I started working with Tron. This is back in that long lost land where we actually had filming cameras. And Glenn was operating the big animation stand at Disney. Disney at the time was kind of a mess, so we called it an ocean of mediocrity. And so a bunch of us were brought in to make this movie, and I would come in with these shots that took 12 to 15 hours to shoot, and they were really, really complex. And I would bring them to the camera department, and the other operators would hide. And Glenn took one look at this one massive shot, and he almost wet himself with joy and said, oh, good, this is going to be great. And he ended up being the superhero cameraman down there. And after a while, I just completely bypassed going anywhere else. And he was the guy who made it all happen. We got to the point where some of the shots, in the old days, you'd have to wind the film back and keep re-exposing it. And he's going, we reached the point where we might actually wear the perfs out on the film. It was like 72 passes. If you remember the movie with all the motorcycles rezzing up and turning it, that was Glenn and I. And not only did he shoot the stuff, but when I bring down these huge stacks of artwork, he had this insane brain that could visualize looking at 72 passes and know exactly what was going to happen and where. And it was like, I had never seen a brain like that before in my life. And the stuff was so complex that I would have a copy of the exposure shooting diagrams. I'd go home, paste them on the wall, and inevitably about 3 or 4 in the morning, he'd call and say, hey, on past 47, you've got a D23 filter, and it should probably be the T24. And I'd go and I'd look down, and man, he's right. Okay, man, do it. And so almost every single time we ran these insane shots through, he was my operator, he made it happen. And it was like, I always called him the superhero. My boss, who I told him what he was doing, said, he is the alpha cameraman. So he was the main guy. We got to be pretty tight, and one of the things that after I left Disney and he left, he ended up working with me over and over and over, and I'd hire him whenever I could, because he was one of like 3 people that I trusted on sending on location when I couldn't go. So we worked together a lot. But the thing I miss the most is his sense of humor, because he had the most disarming charm. He could walk into any situation, no matter how hostile, and somehow get everybody working and laughing. And it was like I saw him do this in so many situations. But my favorite is, one of the things that Glenn did, I don't know if anybody knows this, we used to play paintball together. And this is back in the days where, you know, we all had the marker guns and we'd run up in the mountains, and a bunch of us would be chasing each other around. And I got involved with this. I got dragged in because there's some Disney guys, and they said, "Yeah, bring a friend." And immediately called Glenn. I said, "Glenn, you're going to love this. We have a bunch of guys. We go up in the mountains and we chase each other around with these guns and stuff." He goes, wait a minute. And he gives me that real curious Campbell stink eye. He goes, "Let me get this straight. You got a bunch of white guys running around, one in white, one black." And I said, "I've seen this movie." It's not what you think, actually. It's not that bad. The reality is, I'm 6'2", you're about my height, and they always come after me, so I need someone else as a decoy. Anyway, we had a blast. We played for years up there. So anyway, that's my favorite Glenn story.
So, there is a Glenn Campbell page on Facebook that people have been posting their stories on and posting photos on. And so we want to make sure that if you know it, to go to it and to post there, and or if you have your own Facebook, to put Glenn's name there, to tag it, so that everyone else can see it. That's kind of pending if we ever do a legacy page at this point, but that's kind of where people are collecting stories, and we're using that. You saw some of the stories out here that we printed as well. It's been great meeting a lot of new faces for me, and being surrounded by a lot of people that knew him, loved him, and really supported this man. And you know, it's been really an amazing experience to kind of share this grief and this love at the same time. So thank you everyone for coming out today. Please continue to talk amongst yourselves and to share Glenn's stories with one another. And you know, again, thank you.